I never imagined that one sentence spoken over desert could permanently change the way I saw my own mother. But on New Year's Eve, while everyone else was waiting for the countdown, my life quietly split into a before and an after. My name is Madison Clark. I'm 34 years old, a single mom of 2 girls, and I work night shifts as an ICU nurse. Chaos is normal for meal alarms, emergencies, exhaustion. What I wasn't prepared for was being blindsided at a family dinner by the one person who was supposed to have my back. We were gathered in my mother's brand new suburban house, the kind with perfect floors and furniture no one is allowed to touch. The TV hummed in the background, counting down the final hour of the year. Everyone was pretending things were fine. I should have known better. My mother never does drama quietly. Halfway through dessert, she stood up, raised her glass, and announced loudly, clearly, and proudly, "We're not babysitting your kids anymore." The room froze. My fork stopped mid-air. My daughters Haley and Sophie looked from her face to mine, searching for a punchline that never came. My mother crossed her arms and repeated it, slower this time, like she was reading a legal notice. No more babysitting. No more late nights. No more being my backup. I felt heat rush up my neck, but my voice stayed calm. "Seriously, Mom." She didn't soften. She didn't lower her voice. She just shrugged like she was announcing a canceled subscription. What she didn't say out loud, but everyone in that room understood, was that my kids were now a burden. No one defended us. Not my stepfather. Not my relatives. Plates suddenly became fascinating. And in that silence, something inside me snapped into place. I stood up, told my girls to get their shoes, and walked out of that house before the countdown even reached 10. As we stepped into the cold night air, fireworks cracked somewhere in the distance. My daughter struggled with her jacket zipper, sniffling softly. My mother never followed us outside. Not once. Sitting in the car, keys shaking in my hand, doubt crept in. I was a single mom working ICU nights. I depended on her help. Walking away felt terrifying. Then I remembered my daughter's faces when she said it. And the fear turned into clarity. I drove away, unaware that by morning my phone would be exploding and that one small response from me would expose a family. Truth, my mother had been hiding for years. I thought leaving that night was just about protecting my kids. But I had no idea what my mother would do next when she realized she'd lost control. I woke up on New Year's Day to my phone vibrating so violently on the nightstand that I thought something terrible had happened. For one horrifying second, my ICU instincts kicked in. Emergency. Heart attack, fall, something catastrophic. My hand shot out for the phone. 48 missed calls. Most were from my mother, some from my stepfather, a few from my aunt. Even the house phone had tried to reach me. My stomach dropped as adrenaline flooded my system. I called my mom back immediately. She answered on the second ring. "You need to come here right now," she snapped. No panic. No fear. Just control. "Are you okay?" I asked. "Are you hurt? Did something happen with your heart?" She sighed like I was being dramatic. "I'm fine, but what you did last night was unacceptable." That's when I knew. No emergency. No crisis. Just consequences. I glanced at my girls, sleeping on the couch, hair tangled, blankets twisted, completely unaware of the emotional landmine waiting for me. Part of me wanted to stay home, to protect the peace I'd carved out the night before. But another part knew ignoring this would only make it worse. So I went. When I pulled into my mother's driveway, the house looked perfect. Quiet street, no ambulance, no neighbors. Inside, she was seated at the dining table, makeup done, hairstyled as she'd prepared for a meeting. Because she had. My stepfather sat beside her, gripping a mug like armor. Across from them was my aunt, hands folded tightly, expression unreadable. I stopped just inside the doorway. "So no one's dying?" I asked flatly. My mother rolled her eyes. "Can you not be so dramatic?" Then she launched in. How I embarrassed her. How I stormed out over one comment. I was childish and disrespectful. According to her, I'd humiliated her in her own home. One comment. I repeated. "You announced in front of my kids that they were too much for you." My stepfather cleared his throat. "Your mom has done a lot for you, Madison." That sentence hit like a slap. Because it was always the same script. Everything I did for her disappeared. Everything she'd ever done for me became permanent debt. She leaned forward. "After everything I sacrificed for you, this is how you repay me. By threatening to cut me off from help when I'm finally setting a boundary." I felt something cold settle in my chest. "That wasn't a boundary," I said slowly. "That was a public punishment." She didn't deny it. Instead, she said the word that changed everything. You owe me. Years of exhaustion, guilt, and swallowed anger lined up in my mind like evidence. And for the first time, I didn't push it down. No, I said. I don't. The room went silent. I stood up, knowing this conversation wasn't about babysitting anymore. It was about control and I had just taken it away. I thought saying no would end the fight. But I had no idea how far my mother was willing to go once she realized I wouldn't T-bend anymore. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. That's what shocked them the most. For the first time in my life, I wasn't pleading to be understood. I was explaining a decision. My mother stared at me like I'd spoken a foreign language. You don't owe me, she repeated, incredulous. I raised you, I helped you after your divorce. I watched your kids so you could work. Yes, I said calmly. And I helped you, too. For years. Her lips pressed into a thin line. I listed it all not angrily, just factually. The 40-minute drives after 12-hour ICU shifts, the grocery runs, the cardiology appointments, the hours on hold with insurance companies were because she didn't understand online forms. The weekends I spent fixing fences, handling HOA emails, and tearing up concrete in her backyard, while my kids played alone. That wasn't charity, I said. That was an agreement. Family helping family. She scoffed. Parents take care of children. Then, children take care of their parents. That's how it works. And what about my children? I asked. Where do they fit into that? Because last night, you made it clear they were optional. My aunt shifted in her chair. Quietly, she said, Maggie, you have to admit, saying it that way was harsh. My mother snapped her head toward her. This doesn't concern you. But it did. Everyone in that room felt it. The old pattern was cracking. I turned back to my mother. You want to stop babysitting? Fine, that's your right. But you, Dan T, get to stop helping me while still demanding I drop everything for you. Her face flushed. So, you're abandoning me now that I'm older. I'm not abandoning you, I said. I'm stepping back from being your emergency button. I told her plainly what that meant. No more automatic rides. No more unpaid labor. No more being on call because she refused to ask anyone else for help. If you need something, I said, you can hire someone. Or call a friend. Or use a service. I'm done being the only one sacrificing. The silence was heavy. Even my stepfather didn't argue this time. You can't be serious, my mother said finally. Watch me. I walked out of her house for the second time in 24 hours. No kids this time. No coat rushed over my arm. Just me and a strange sense of certainty. Driving back toward the city, my hands shook but not from fear. From the realization that I had just done something irreversible. For the first time, I wasn't reacting to my mother. I was choosing myself. I thought walking away would bring peace. But instead, my phone started lighting up hand. That's when the guilt tactics began. The silence after I walked away didn't last. For the first 2 days, my phone stayed quiet, and I almost convinced myself my mother had finally accepted it. No errands. No demands. No emergencies. Just my regular ICU shifts, school drop-offs, and the strange feeling of having extra mental space. Then the messages started. At first, they were almost polite. I'm sorry if I hurt your feelings. Can we talk? I miss the girls. I stared at the screen during my breaks at work, noticing what wasn't there. No apology for embarrassing my daughters. No acknowledgement of what she'd actually done. Just regret that her usual access to me had been cut off. I responded once, carefully. I'm not keeping the girls from you. We're taking space until I know they'll be treated kindly. That should have been enough. The next message came the following morning. Fine, I'll babysit sometimes, but you still need to drive me to my appointments. I can't do everything alone. There it was again, the trade, the expectation that my time and energy were negotiable resources. I didn't reply. That's when the tone shifted. After everything I've done for you, I guess I know where I stand now. Don't worry about your old mother. I'll figure it out somehow. Then came the calls from relatives who had only heard her version. Your mom is really upset. She's been crying. You know she had that heart scare. Family doesn't treat each other like this. I listened. Then I repeated the same calm explanation. She chose to stop helping with my kids. I'm respecting her choice. I'm just not filling in every gap anymore. Some understood. Others didn't. While all this was happening, I started building a life that didn't revolve around anticipating my mother's needs. I worked out a babysitting trade with a neighbor. I adjusted my schedule at work. I stopped checking my phone every 5 minutes, waiting for the next demand. It felt uncomfortable, like learning to walk without a crutch you'd depended on for years. A week later, my aunt texted me privately, "Can I come by this weekend? There's something you should know." She showed up with a bag of bakery cookies and a look that told me this wasn't a casual visit. After small talk, she leaned in and lowered her voice. "Your mom is in trouble," she said. "Not medical trouble. Financial." She explained that the backyard renovation my mother had bragged about was spiraling. Hidden fees, upgrades, penalties, bills piling up fast. And telling people it's happening because you weren't there to help. I felt that old instinct surge, the urge to rush in and fix it. Then I remembered my daughter's faces at that dinner table, and I stayed seated. I thought refusing to rescue her would end the story. But my mother was about to make a decision that would expose everything she'd been hiding. At first, I tried not to care. I told myself my mother's renovation problems weren't my responsibility. She was an adult. She'd chosen to move forward without asking me for help, without waiting, without advice, to prove she didn't need me. But the details kept leaking out. My aunt called one evening while I was folding laundry. She finally showed me the paperwork. She said, "That project she bragged about. It's doubled in cost." I sat down on the edge of the bed. The original estimate had been reasonable, but my mother had said yes to every upgrade. Better stone, bigger grill, fancy lighting. Then came the penalties: permits filed late, inspections failed, HOA fines stacking up because she'd started construction before approval. "She didn't call you when they brought the contract?" my aunt asked gently. I already knew the answer. Calling me would have meant admitting she still needed me. Instead, she signed everything. And now she was bleeding money to protect her pride. Over the next week, the story spread through the family. A cousin mentioned my mother had asked to borrow cash. My grandmother let it slip that she'd been quietly sending her money for months. And through all of it, the same narrative kept popping up. If Madison hadn't abandoned us, this never would have happened. That word abandoned burned. I wasn't the one who hired contractors from TV ads. I wasn't the one who ignored permits. I wasn't the one who refused help until it was too late. One afternoon, my aunt met me near the hospital and slid a folder across the table. Inside were invoices, violation notices, and a revised total that made my stomach tighten. Just under $22,000. My mother's signature was on every page. I closed the folder slowly. "I'm not getting involved." My aunt studied me, then nodded. "Good. She needs to feel this." For a moment, the old version of me screamed to jump in to argue with contractors, make calls, find loopholes. That's what I'd always done. That's who she expected me to be. But then I pictured my daughters. Movie nights canceled, promises broken, apologies whispered into their hair. I let the folder go. When my mother finally called me herself, her voice was thick with practiced sorrow. "I hope you're happy," she said. "They're robbing us. If you'd been here, this wouldn't have happened." I kept my voice steady. "You chose to do this without me." Silence. "So that's it," she snapped. "You'll just watch me drown because you're mad." "No," I said quietly. "I'm choosing not to save you from the choices you made to hurt me." She hung up. My hands were shaking, but underneath the fear, there was relief. For the first time, she had a mess I couldn't clean up. I thought letting her face the consequences would finally slow her down. But instead, she changed tactics in a way I never expected. 2 weeks passed. No angry calls. No guilt texts. No dramatic updates about bills or contractors. The silence felt unnatural, like the calm before a storm. I almost started to believe my mother had finally accepted that I was coming to rescue her this time. Then, in the middle of my shift, my phone buzzed. "Madison, I know I said things I shouldn't have. I was stressed and took it out on you and the girls. Can we please talk like adults?" I read it 3 times. There was no but. No immediate pivot into how hard her life was. No demand hidden in the same breath. That alone made my stomach tighten. With my mother, softness was never accidental. Still, moments like this were rare. And part of me wanted to believe her. I replied carefully. "Short coffee. Public place. No arguing in front of the kids." She agreed almost instantly. We met on a Sunday afternoon at a cafe halfway between our neighborhoods. I arrived early, wrapping my hands around a mug I barely tasted. When she walked in with my stepfather beside her, something about her looked smaller. Not weak, just deflated, like the performance had exhausted her. She sat across from me and spoke before I could. I'm sorry. The words sounded stiff, practiced. I waited. For embarrassing you, she continued. For the way I said things at dinner. For saying the girls were too much. That last part came out quietly, her eyes fixed on the table. I nodded once. They heard you. Her face tightened. I never meant to hurt them, but you did, I said. Haley asked if you were mad at her. Sophie thought she'd done something wrong. For a brief second, the mask slipped. Guilt flickered across her face before being replaced by something else, fear. I felt cornered, she admitted. Everyone talks about how strong you are now, how you manage everything alone. I used to be the one people said that about. There it was. She wasn't apologizing because she understood. She was apologizing because she felt replaced. I'm scared, she said softly. Of not being needed. Of not mattering. I sat back, emotions colliding inside me. Sympathy tried to surface, but it ran into years of resentment. I understand being scared, I said. But I won't let my kids be the cost of you feeling important. She looked up sharply. So I laid out the rules, clearly, calmly. No insults. No burdened jokes ever. Babysitting was not currency. And I was no longer her automatic solution. If you want to be in our lives, I said, it has to be because you choose to be kind, not because you need leverage. She nodded once. I'll try. Not a promise. Not a change. Just an attempt. We finished our coffee politely, cautiously. When we left, she hugged me stiffly, unsure of her place. I drove home knowing something fragile had been built, and also knowing that fragile things break easily. I thought setting boundaries had finally changed things, but I hadn't seen what my mother was still doing behind the scenes. Thanks for watching the video, subscribe to the channel and click the bell icon.